Yo, this is Terrance Gaines, aka Brother Tech,
And this is Nica Montford, aka Tech Savvy Diva.
and welcome back to the Snob OS Show, the show for Apple snobs, where we talk all things Apple and then some. We definitely want to welcome you back to another episode. This is episode 273 of the Snob OS Show, and as per usual, we always want to thank all of those people who have been listening to us, been rocking with us for so long. We also want to give a special shout out to those who support the show financially. If you want to support the show financially, please go to patreon.com/snoboscast. And as a thank you for joining our snobbish community, which is what we lovingly call our Patreon supporters, you will get access to the show early because we record live and we allow our snobbists to listen in on the show live. In addition to that, you get some exclusive content that you will not get on this show. So if you want to get those perks, please go to patreon.com/snoboscast. So we want to definitely say thank you to all of our financial supporters. And we want to get right into the show. So we want to always start with the lowdown. And I've got a couple of things for the lowdown. First and foremost, we talked about this kind of indirectly last week, but well, let me give you the context. So last week we talked about Apple getting on the OpenAI board as a
Observer.
observer. That's what it's
Mhm.
called. They don't have any voting power. They don't have any sort of influence. They are an observer to what all the stuff is going on with OpenAI as it relates to the board. Well, Microsoft, prior to Apple joining the board, was also had an observership, we'll call it, on OpenAI's board. Well, that was until this week when Microsoft leaves the OpenAI board amongst antitrust issues. So basically, what Microsoft is leaving because they don't want to be hit with they foresee
Yeah.
that Microsoft being on OpenAI's board, Microsoft investing however many billion, I think it was like 8 or
It was
9, 10
10.
billion,
Yeah. It's
$10 billion
crazy.
dollars in OpenAI. People were rumoring and having a little talks saying that may be antitrust issues, and Microsoft has already dealt with that back in the past with Internet Explorer and all the stuff that's happening to them in the UK. They was like, we don't need these problems, so we're out. So they leave their observership on the OpenAI board.
Mm-hmm.
Reason why we're talking about this in the lowdown, which is the reason why we normally talk about Apple stuff,
Mm-hmm.
is because we reported, like I mentioned last week, that Apple joined the board as a result of Apple choosing OpenAI first to be the quote unquote launch partner when Apple releases its generative AI. They call it Apple Intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, as a backstory, Apple will handle all the on-device requests, any data about you, any data that's stored in your Apple ID account, any information that you want to get from the internet as far as Apple Intelligence. Apple then tag teams OpenAI or ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT lets you find all the stuff that you find for the internet. In
Right.
exchange for that, we reported that Apple gets a observership seat on OpenAI's board. Well, according to this story that I found this week, sources say Apple has given up their non-voting seat as well. So I don't know what's going on over there. Maybe they poked their head in and saw the mess and was like, "Yeah, we don't want those problems." I don't know. What do you think the issue is over at OpenAI for Microsoft and Apple to no longer have those quote unquote seats on the board?
Right. My how week changed. I mean, literally just last Wednesday, we
Mm-hmm.
were talking about, oh, well, this is, kind of good. Um, Apple can kind of snitch back. Phil Schiller was the person who was supposed to hold the role.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, go back to kind of snitch to say, hey, this is what's coming up the pike. We can kind of plan ahead. But I have to agree. There are some potential issues with OpenAI
Mm-hmm.
and the way that they handle their business. And we talked about this even before. OpenAI has a nonprofit part and a
Mm-hmm.
for-profit part
Mm-hmm.
of the business. So Apple already gets lots of lawsuits. Microsoft has
All the time.
already been sued. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's one of those things is they don't want to hitch their wagon to something that's going to cost them potentially
Potentially. Mm-hmm.
billions. and
Mhm.
billions of dollars for both of them. I think what's going to benefit Apple is I don't think Phil had taken the seat yet. I
Right.
think just last week it was announced that he would, but I
Mhm.
don't think he had officially had it. As opposed to Microsoft, they had been on it for a while because, again, they're one of the initial investors. They pledged over, I can't remember the amount of time, 10 billion, but their
Mhm.
initial investment was 1 billion. So they
Mhm.
dropped off 1 billion up front and said, here you go, have at it. And it's going to be interesting to see if Apple rolls back um, the chat GPT part of Apple Intelligence. And like I said last week, it wouldn't surprise me if Apple basically has kind of like a kill switch. This is before I even knew about this, if that they have some kind of kill switch to kind of turn this off if it turns out that OpenAI is doing something they don't like, or if the data flow is not quite what they wanted, or there are unspecified security issues. Could be a myriad of things. I personally think, I was like, I think they have like a kill switch that goes because, as you mentioned in the lead up to this, first Apple layer of Apple Intelligence is on device stuff. Second layer is the an Apple Cloud type of situation where
Mhm.
it has data, and the third was OpenAI, which OpenAI you have to approve each time you want to say, these two layers don't give me the information I want. I want to go external. I wouldn't be surprised if when Apple Intelligence is launched in the fall,
Mhm.
if we don't have that Apple, that anymore, because as we mentioned last week, there's no financial gain from
Mhm.
either party at this point for
Mhm.
having chat gpt as a source.
Right.
So I think it was smart of them to not take money up front, and to use it as like a third layer, and to have to force users to accept it every single time. But I
Mhm.
think this is just a way for both of them to say, you know what? We see that this could potentially be really, really bad. And I know
Mhm.
there were some people on Twitter today talking about someone posted, was like, I'm tired of seeing all of the tech people talk about their money and their fancy cars, and real people with real money, they don't flaunt it like that. And then they posted a picture of Sam Altman in a $5 million like car just cruising around. And so it's just one of those things where it's like, and the whole, I think the mission statement is like, improving for all without financial blah, 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 blah. Obviously, that's
Right.
not the case. It's always about the money.
Well
Um,
well,
and-
according to Microsoft, they say that they left the board because they gained enough stability and that its involvement was no longer necessary. So basically,
right.
Microsoft saying they're straight. We don't need to be sitting over on top of them like uh, overseers or
Helicopter parents.
right, right. We have enough security and stability in them. We can let them do their thing. But that
How convenient.
yeah, because the
Yeah,
reason why, yeah, Microsoft was there because of that whole dust up with Sam Altman getting fired and getting back on.
right.
According to Microsoft, it's like, all right, we need to watch what y'all doing.
Yeah,
Now they say that they're at a stability level. Now they don't need that anymore. But again, the whole antitrust thing
yeah.
wouldn't be doing Microsoft any favors, and Apple already is like, yeah, I don't know if we want to be a part of that. To a response to the kill switch,
Hmm.
that could be true, but what I believe is going to
Hmm.
happen is ChatGPT just won't be the exclusive partner
Right.
when Apple Intelligence launches. What I think is going to happen is when the fall comes and Apple announces Apple Intelligence, whether it be September or October, whenever,
Hmm.
it's going to be ChatGPT,
Multiple. Yeah.
Copilot, Gemini, whomever else, and then we'll have to pick from those up
Yeah.
front. When they announced it back at WWDC,
They only
Apple
mentioned.
specifically said ChatGPT will be the
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
I believe they'll have 3 plus
Oh yeah.
from Jump Street.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree as well. And you can't tell me that what Microsoft is saying, they're secure. You can't tell me that Microsoft would be happy with someone from Apple sitting on the board and not them. I just you
Well,
if
Microsoft and Apple are
they're
frenemies.
frenemies, right? But
Mhm.
they want to know what the other one's doing as much as they
Sure.
can. So even if they were like, oh, we were gonna leave anyway, we're just gonna let Apple sit on the observer seat. No, you weren't. No, you weren't. Cause
Let
that's
them have
your
that
yeah.
uphand that upfront information, they not have it.
Yeah.
So
No.
maybe Apple and Microsoft did a deal, and Microsoft said, "Hey, if you put us on Apple Intelligence, we'll come off the OpenAI seat. But in order for us to come off the Apple OpenAI seat, y'all got to come off the OpenAI seat as well." And
Yeah.
then Apple was like, "All right,
Wasn't
since
a
we ain't
hard
invest,
sell.
yeah, yeah, we ain't investing no money in OpenAI. We ain't took no money from them. They ain't took no money from us.
Right.
You know,
And we don't
so
want no more lawsuits. So
right,
this
we
is a
don't want,
win-win.
yeah, so
Yeah,
time will tell to see what happens
for
with this,
sure.
but sounds like from us, OpenAI still's got some work to do, regardless of what
Absolutely.
Microsoft says.
Absolutely.
All right, so the next story I got up is a couple of beta stories. Normally, I don't
Okay.
report on beta stories because they're just betas. Who knows if they shows up? But these are pretty solid features that are currently on the beta that I'm pretty sure will show up in the final version. The
Mhm.
first one is AirPods Pro Beta 2 has some new features available. So if you're on the AirPods Pro Beta 2 or you're on the beta program and you can download Beta 2, two new features that you should be able to play around with is the head gestures. And basically what that is if you've got your AirPods Pro in, you're listening to music or podcast or whatever the case may be, and
Mhm.
you get a phone call, you can shake your head yes or shake your head no. And depending on which one you say, if you shake your head yes, Siri will automatically answer the call for you and it'll connect you to the phone call. If you shake your head no, it'll send it to
Start
voicemail. So I thought that
declining.
was pretty cool.
That's cool.
And then the second feature for AirPods Pro Beta 2 is voice isolation. Right now, on your phone, on your iPad, on your Mac, it has voice isolation to where it'll dull out the background so people
Mhm.
can only hear your voice. Well, the AirPods Pro 2 in the Beta 2 version will be able to do that as well. So you'll be able to hear them crisp and clear, and they'll be able to hear the same for you. So if you're riding on a subway or you're out in the streets or you're at a big event or a
Mhm.
conference and somebody gives you a phone call, you can turn on that voice isolation and it'll clear out that background noise so they can hear you better.
Nice. I like the head gesture, the yes and the no.
Yeah,
That
yeah, yeah.
it looks like it's bringing a little bit of kind of Vision Pro
Hmm.
into the I guess traditional Apple product line. So
Hmm.
I think, if they can get this going, we may get some more gestures of things that we can do as well.
Yeah, my assumption is you have to have the call announcement on in the
Mhm.
AirPods Pro feature. There's a feature to where you can turn on and it'll announce your calls in the headphones. So if you get a
Right.
text message, if you get a phone call, it'll say, "Hey, you're receiving a phone call from this and that and this and that." And then
Mhm.
if you got the head gestures turned on, you can nod up or down or yes or no to
Nice.
act on that. All
That's
right,
something
so
to do.
that's it for that one. The second one is RCS. We've been talking about RCS on and off, but now finally, if you're on iOS 18 beta 3, you can actually go into the iPhone settings, apps, and then messages, and you can enable RCS. Now, of course, you've got to have AT&T, T-Mobile, or Verizon, which most of the people in the United States do.
Mhm.
There are a couple of other carriers across the country, but we're Americans, so I only
We're
care about the
Americans. We're
American stuff.
selfish. We only care about what affects us.
You can go to the show notes to get
Right.
all the link to the story that has the other carriers, but
Yeah.
most people in the United States are on AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon, or some of their subsidiaries.
Right.
So you'll be able to turn on RCS. Of course, again, you got to have iOS 18 beta 3 enabled. So if you do all that, you'll be able to get read receipts, typing support. So basically, if you're texting somebody, they can see that you're texting because of those three little bubbles, emoji reactions to messages, and file transfers when you're messaging anybody with an Android. Now, of course, if you're messaging somebody Apple to Apple, you already got those features. But if you're
Right.
messaging somebody with an Android, you'll get to have those additional features if you're using RCS. Again, the reason why I mentioned those two, the AirPods Pro Beta and RCS, is because there's a good chance that both of those will make it to the beta.
So, question.
Mhm.
So, I know correct me if I'm wrong, for the iOS 18 beta, for most of these features to work, you have to have at least the iPhone 15, right?
For RCS, no.
Okay.
For there's something for Apple Intelligence, you got to have an iPhone
Okay,
15.
It's the Apple Intelligence part.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Okay,
But for
okay.
the RCS, it should go to every device that
Okay.
supports iOS 18, which
Gotcha,
is
gotcha.
everything except the iPhone. I want to say the iPhone 10. If you've got the iPhone 10, it won't support iOS 18. The
Gotcha.
iPhone 10R, the iPhone 10s,
Yeah.
and then up will
Okay.
have iOS 18. I'll have to check that, but I think
I think you're right. I remember it was something with the beta that you could only do it with the 15 and it was the Apple Intelligence.
you could be right. I'll have to double check on that and see if
Okay.
you RCS compatibility for devices. But I'm pretty sure if if a little Android can support RCS, then an
Right.
iPhone can too.
Obviously.
All right, so that's it for that one. The last one I have in the lowdown is there are people that is going into an Apple store, not the
Mhm.
App Store, going
The
into
physical
Apple,
brick and mortar
the
store.
physical brick and mortar Apple Store, and they are bringing their laptops, and they are from the display computers.
Uh-huh.
They are airdropping full Apple Suite products from the display computers onto their Mac.
And
Basically,
it
and
works?
it works because they're not just clicking on the app logo or the app icon and doing an airdrop. There's some steps you got to go through. You got to go into the application settings. You got to
That's
go into
what you
the
have to go into
library.
that.
You got to drill
Ah.
down into those actual application files. But once you find those application files, you can select them, select airdrop, and airdrop it right to your Mac.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Crafty little suckers.
yeah, yeah, sure doing it. And of course, in the story I thought was funny, people are there's a of course people are trying to make a name for themselves. So they go on Reddit, they go into these little chat rooms and they say,
And they
here's how
snitch
you
on
do it,
themselves.
and blowing up the spot. Because now Apple knows. Because now and then they're gonna figure out a way to shut
To
that
stop it.
down. So instead of and I'm talking about like Final Cut Pro, I'm talking about Logic Pro, the
Oh,
the
wow.
compressor app, which is every time I go to look at it, and I was like, yeah, I need that because basically what it does, so for example, for us, we will record this show
Mhm,
and the show will be like 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 gigs. We have a free application that we use to kind of shrink it down so it conserves less space, but
mhm.
it's free, it's freeware and it's, open source, but it's not as, I mean, not, open source software is good, but there's nothing like a actual packaged
Right,
consumer product, and especially one made by Apple. That's what
right,
compressors is. Apple has their own file compressing application that you can shrink down pictures, you can shrink down videos, so and so. So every time I go look at them, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go get that compressor app. Then I'm like, nah, I don't want it that much because it costs money. Well, now I know I can go into an Apple store with my MacBook, get to scroll into their model display, go down into the application files, and airdrop compressor to my Mac. Now I ain't gonna do it, but I just want to let y'all know that's what people are doing, and I'm pretty sure Apple will patch this in no time soon.
And they've been doing it since as early as 2017. So like
Mhm,
you said, they are literally blowing up the spot like what, 6 years later. They've been
mhm.
doing this undercover since 2017, and now cuz people want to just be dumb criminals, you can't. If you're going to be
Well,
trying to do
so
some slick shit, you
it's
can't tell it.
yeah, and that's my point. It is savvy, but you can't blow up the spot. You got to keep it on the low. And you going into Reddit trying to, I'm the first one to discover this, and I want to make a
Some
name for
clout.
myself. You done blew up the
Ugh.
spot for everybody else. Now, again, I ain't gonna do it, but at the same time, you keep something good like that. You keep it on the low. And for y'all to, if
You don't put it on the internet, you kinda
right,
pass it like old
uh
school.
huh,
You gotta go
uh
a little old school with some of this stuff. Oh, gee.
huh,
And you know what is going to be funny when Apple figures this out? You know how petty Apple is. There's probably some sort of library or registry key or something that they keep on all these display models because they have them and people try and steal them. You know, if you go outside of
You lock
the
them down.
walls,
Mhm.
they
Brick 'em.
probably have a database somewhere stored with all of the key things. And somebody's going to write a program. They can run a script that's going to go and find all of these because, of
Mhm.
course, computers are online and kill it. You're going to try and open up Final Cut one day and it's going to be like, it's not there. It's like, bro, what's going on? Why isn't it there? And Apple has figured out a way how to, get these off of the computers.
Right, right. Yeah, just have them running in like maybe even have them running like a, what do you call it? VM, virtual machine, and
Mm,
have all the applications on the desktop or the display models not really running the on-device software. They have it running in a virtual machine or something
yeah.
like that, and then that
Yeah.
will just do that because then
That'll get rid of the,
uh
them, people being able to airdrop it. And then, again, the petty that lives going back retroactively. Or maybe they'll just say, you know what, screw it, we don't care. But if they figure out people have been doing this since 2017,
and you
it might be one of those things where it's like, you know what, you're not gonna get us.
and they may make it worse for us, right? Because this point, I'm just gonna read this part in the story.
Hmm.
It's a very simple process. Every Mac application has a .app file, so we can share them as we want. And since Apple
Um,
just sells its apps instead of a license or a subscription, it works just like the app file. The same source says that there's no verification process or checks to confirm the Apple ID, as this only seems to happen when the app is updated. This is absolutely traceable, but since the software is stolen and not tied to an Apple ID, they can get away with it. So the reason why I read that is because this could be a problem for all of us, because you know what Apple can just do: make Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro subscription
not
based.
subscription
Uh,
services. No.
yep. The whole reason why I use Final Cut Pro, the whole reason why we use GarageBand is because, well, GarageBand is free, but with
Yeah.
Final Cut Pro, all I gotta
You
do is
own
pay.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
I paid I can't remember if it's 290, 199,
I think
299.
it's 199.
Yeah. I pay 199 one time and then I own it. Anytime they send an update, I get it. Unlike
Right.
Adobe, you got to subscribe to all that stuff.
You have to pay every month for
Un-
Photoshop.
right. Unlike Excel, PowerPoint,
All the Microsoft 365
you
stuff.
gotta pay subscriptions for that. And
Copilot, all of that.
right. Well, with Mac, they just sell their apps. Well, this may blow up the spot to where they're like, yeah, now we're not doing that no more. We're making everybody pay subscriptions. So thank you.
Everybody's paying for these people,
Yes.
taking advantage all this time.
So thank you, thieves, for not being able to keep a good thing quiet and
I
just
know.
gotta get that clout.
Gotta run your mouth on the internet.
All right, so that's it for the lowdown. We're going to move into second string, and I thought this was pretty cool. We talk about frenemies, right?
Hmm.
Google and Apple are doing the second half of a photo transfer tool. Basically, what happens back in 2021, Google created a tool that lets you transfer your photos from Google Photos, their iCloud, their cloud service for storing photos. Google created a tool that lets you easily transfer your Google Photos into iCloud Photos.
Okay.
Now, to kind of close the loop, Apple has created a transfer tool that lets you transfer tools from iCloud Photos
To
into
Google.
Google Photos. And this is a partnership that has to do with a data transfer initiative that provides people with trustworthy tools that offer an easy way to directly transfer their personal internet data. Now, you can do it manually, but it takes forever.
Yeah.
Or you can go on the internet and cross your fingers and
Yeah.
find some software that'll enable you to do it. But I mean, cross your fingers, because if
You
something
never
go
know.
wrong, if something
Yeah.
breaks, if they steal your photos, you got to run that risk. But if you're
Yeah.
doing it using a Google tool, or if you're doing it using an Apple tool, the trust is there, right? So
Yeah.
that's the whole reason why they're doing it. So, Google and Apple, they have competing products, but at the same time, they are acknowledging that what's most important is your data security. So it's like, if you
Right.
got to leave Google or if you got to leave Apple, I'd much rather the experience be as smooth as possible versus you
Right.
get mad by trying to do it yourself, or
Yeah.
somebody stealing your photos because you on the internet just clicking on anything.
Getting all kinds of viruses and people hacking
Mhm.
into your system.
Right, right, because there's a bunch of them out there. There's
Oh,
tons
yeah.
of applications and software that will tell you up and down. It's so easy. All you gotta do is click this and we'll transfer your data onto whatever. But again, that's data from a application, from a software, from a person that you don't know versus you
Right.
already having a relationship with Google or you already having a relationship with Apple. So shout out to them for, putting their bygones be bygones just for the fact of
For
making
this
sure.
one thing.
Yeah, for this just one thing. Just one thing.
We're gonna
Yeah,
be cool on. We're gonna be
yeah. All
besties.
right.
They're gonna do the weird hearts. How the kids do the crazy hearts.
Yep. So we'll make sure we put the link in the show notes so you can go take a look at that. If you are trying to
Yeah.
transfer back and forth, we'll make sure you have that information.
Cool.
All right. So that is it for second string. We're going to move into for the culture. I think we kind of recapped or talked about the BET Awards. I can't
Mhm.
remember if it was the pre show or was in an actual episode. I can't remember. But we kind of talked about it wasn't all that. I can't remember exactly what we were talking
You know what?
about.
I don't think we talked about it.
I could have swore we mentioned something as it related to. Did we talk about the Keith Lee thing? Him and Taraji P. Henson? No, I don't think we
I
talked
I
about
don't
that.
think we talked about it.
Okay, well, we didn't talk about it because it wasn't all that. There were
Right.
some good points, and I
Yeah.
think one of the good points was Will Smith did an actual performance at this year's BET Awards, and he actually did I don't know if it's a gospel song, maybe an inspirational song, but he
A
did have
positive.
but he did have um what's the short guy's name?
Short guy.
Gospel.
I don't know.
Short. Come on. You know who it
Kirk
is.
Franklin?
Kirk Franklin.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't think of his name. Kirk Franklin, Will Smith did this performance at BET Awards and he brought out Kirk Franklin and what's his group?
God's Property?
No, not the newer one.
I don't know what the new is. I just
Uh,
remember God's
Maverick
Property.
City. That's who it is.
Oh, I didn't realize. Did I know who
I th-
from
I
Maverick
think
City?
I think
Okay.
that I think that's well at any rate, the point I'm
Maybe
trying
he
to
was
get
with Maverick City.
right. The point I'm trying to get at is similar to other artists in the past, some certain entertainers in the past
Mhm.
who have quote unquote fallen from grace and have either turned their life over to Christ or have went to the gospel to kind of I don't want to resurrect their careers.
Redemption.
Redemption, right? Will Smith has kind of been on this redemption tour,
Yeah.
because in the past couple years he's been going through it. The
Yeah.
slap with him and Chris Rock, the
The
entanglement stuff,
entanglement,
and
red
then
table talk.
right, and then
Yeah.
the subsequent we divorced, we split up, but we're not divorced, kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
for the
We're
past
open, separated, but
yeah,
we together, all
right.
that
So for the
crazy stuff.
for the past 5 years, Will Smith has been going through it,
Yeah.
especially kinda crescendoed at the slap with Chris Rock, and he kinda
Yeah.
fell off from social media, fell off from all the different shows and the movies, and he started to turn a corner with Bad Boys. They launched the new Bad Boys movie. Everybody seems to love it.
I enjoyed it very
Yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah. It's a good time. It's a good
Yeah.
time. Everybody seems to enjoy it. So then he follows that up with this appearance
BET
at the BET
performance.
Awards. So I guess my question to you is Will Smith turning to the gospel for redemption, is it going to work? Or, because he did mention that there may be some new music on the way, so I guess my question to you is Will Smith, similar to artists and entertainers and celebrities of the past, when they have their we fall downs, they are turning to the gospel to get back up. Do you think this is genuine for Will Smith? And do you think this will actually work?
First of all, the community never turned his back on Will Smith. I'm sorry. Even after the slap, people are like, yeah, bro, it was your big night. You finally won your Oscar. It kind of tainted. It made it, a little bit bad, but then we were so happy you won and we still was giving you your big ups. It was pretty much some other people who were like, oh my God, he could have killed him.
Well, two
Or,
things
oh
can be
my,
true at the same
yeah.
time, right? There were a lot of black folks who were mad at Will Smith, but that don't mean
Oh,
we canceled him.
yeah.
That just means we were mad at Will Smith for
And then we
yo,
wasn't.
right. It was like, yo, you didn't have
Yeah.
to do that at the awards. But it was kind of
My
like, we
thing,
get
yeah.
it. We get it.
Yeah.
But that wasn't a good look. That's what we
Yeah.
say. In the hood,
Most
yeah.
people I came across,
Mhm.
it was like, whatever. And then I
Yeah.
get, there was some people that were mad, but it was like,
It wasn't a good
you
look.
made us look. It was like, respectability politics. You
Right,
made us look bad in front of company, that kind of thing.
right,
But to me, nobody really turned their back, especially in our community, on
right,
Will Smith.
right.
Um, and this gospel route, I didn't need it. And honestly, I don't need new music from Will Smith in 2024.
Mhm,
I think he, you know, the whole kind of squeaky clean, good kid
mhm,
type of vibe. Sir, you're in your 50s. You have grown children. You've been married. We know you curse. We know you
mhm,
drink. We know you have sex. We know you just be out here
mhm,
being
mhm,
a regular ass adult like pretty much everybody else. So,
mhm.
keeping that promise you made to your Meemaw about only doing clean rap, you you've honored your pledge to Meemaw.
Right, right.
You can
So
let that go. So I personally,
mhm,
I I don't want to hear this kind of music from Will Smith. If I do hear music from Will Smith, I want to hear grown ass man Will Smith music,
sure,
because he
sure,
got a lot of stuff to talk about. I
sure.
mean, he has a lot of stuff to talk about. And I guess he's, kind of, with going the gospel route, maybe he's kind of going overboard just to make sure he has everybody back in his corner, which really most people never really did leave.
Right.
But to me, I don't think it was necessary for him to go this route. And I don't think a whole album of inspirational gospel music from Will Smith.
Well, we don't know. That's the rumor, right?
Right. Right.
Um,
But my thing is, if you're coming out with this gospel record, is that kind of setting the stage? Or is it like, back in the 80s, 90s, mostly the 90s, the early 2000s, you have your hardcore, R&B, hip hop, rap, and then you have the one song that was like the
got you,
inspiration
got
church
you.
song
Dear
on the
Mama,
whole album. Your
Dear
Dear
Mama.
Mamas,
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
I
Mhm.
love my God. I'm so
Uh-huh.
grateful for
Right,
all the
right, right.
blessings. You have that one song that's for your grandma, because you got a whole album of cussing and,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
talking about debauchery.
Right.
So if that's what the angle he's going, then I guess that's okay. But like I said, Will Smith has lived a phenomenal life as far as an entertainer, and just a very interesting life because of who he is.
Mhm.
And if you're going to do music, I want to hear about that stuff.
Right.
I don't necessarily want to hear all this type of stuff.
So, so I listened to the performance at the BET
Okay.
Awards. I didn't do it live. I listened to it after the fact. It's on YouTube. We'll
Mhm.
make sure to put the link in the show notes. It was decent. It was actually good. It was no different than a Lecrae. It was no different than
Gotcha.
a Malik Music or Malik Music. I think that's his name. They
Malik.
are Malik. I think it's
I,
Malik Music or
yeah,
Malik
I think it
Music.
is. I think it's Malik.
You know, I think there's another artist called Krishan, I think that's his name. There are a couple of artists out there that they sing positive, spiritual, inspirational music, and it's actually
Right.
good, right?
Okay.
I could definitely see him in that lane. To your point, though, you can still make grown folks music and it not be so inspirational, right? Jay Z
Yeah.
is a proof of that with the 444 album.
444. Yeah.
He wasn't talking about opulence. He wasn't talking about all the drugs he sold in the past. He wasn't
Yeah.
talking about all the women and all the typical rap stuff. He talked about,
Right.
investments. He talked about the mistakes he made. He talked about the redemption he had to, go through for his wife. He talks about
Yeah.
his kids, talks about
Yeah.
legacy. Those are all the things that, I would expect a
Mhm.
50/60-year-old rapper to rap
I think
about,
that's
right?
awesome. Right.
I would prefer that over the debauchery. If you want to do debauchery, that's fine. But at
Right.
50, late 50s, 60s, I need you to talk about stuff that I talk about or that I live through. Like I got bad knees. I need
Right.
to get it. I need to stay in the gym. My metabolism is slow.
Yeah, like he has things that he can definitely talk
Right.
about that
Getting my
I think would
kids
be interesting. Right.
right, trying to get my kids into the adult world and
Right.
guiding them and, still keeping it keep your love life, keeping that
Yeah, keeping it sexy,
yeah,
keeping it growing and
yeah,
sexy, that
keeping that
kinda stuff.
going, right.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Because I'm late 40s. I don't wanna hear about some young kid, sipping
What they doing at the
lean
club
and
smoking
yeah,
hookah.
and right,
I
right,
don't care
right,
about that. Yeah.
right. So, I don't believe
That's why I said I think there's a gap in that, you have your older millennials, your
Mhm,
younger Gen Xers who were in that same kind of sweet spot, who there's a gap because it's either go super, super young, or even the people who are our age or in the range making music, they're still talking about what they're doing outside. And honestly, we're not outside like that,
and it's
because
getting old and
outside is
played
crazy.
out. It's like,
Yeah.
come
And
on,
outside's
man.
not fun like that. And we've heard it. We lived through the 99s and the 2000s. So we
Mhm,
know, what was out there, give us something different. And I think he could really, I haven't listened to performance, maybe I go and look at it after the
mhm,
show. But if it was good, he could, be a gap filler in that space for people. Because like I said, I don't want to hear, the bubblegum, type of thing that he's known for.
mhm,
Throw in a couple tracks here or there of that, sure. But I wouldn't want to hear a whole album about that, especially when I know that there are so many other things that he could really talk about that would actually be good.
mhm. Yep,
Yeah.
I agree. I don't necessarily, believe that. I want to believe that this was a coincidence that he
Hmm.
performed at the BET Awards and sang a inspirational song and had, gospel artists like Maverick City and,
But they always
Kirk
do like
Franklin.
a
Yeah.
church part of it. And I mean, if you got Sexy Red out there being Sexy
We
Red, you
gotta
got
gotta
Lotto, you
yeah,
got, Meg and Glow. Even though
yeah,
I love Meg and Glow, I like Lotto too. It's just like, you got to throw that, you know, the gospel section
yeah, gotta
of
give
the
the
award show in there. You got to get that in there because of all the other debauchery.
yeah, so maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe he's not turning to that
Hmm.
age old, trick to go back to church when you've quote unquote sinned, for lack of
Sinned.
a better term.
Right.
All right, so that's going to do it for the culture. We're going to move into the hookup. There is a new phishing scheme out there that's aimed for Apple users. And basically, what's happening is attackers are increasingly targeting iPhones and Apple IDs. The attack bombards iPhone users with notifications or multi factor authentication messages to persuade them they need to reset their password. Apple iPhone SMS users, or attackers rather, are getting increasingly sneaky using fear factor wording such as act now or important.
Hmm.
Just know that my hookup for the week is number one, be on the lookout for those messages. And number two, just know Apple will never hit you up unsolicited in a
Yeah.
text message suggesting, urging, prompting you to change your Apple ID. I say unsolicited because, for instance, I was on a support call maybe 2 weeks ago, and in order to confirm who they were talking to, Apple would then send a notification to your device
Hmm.
that you have to accept. But that's only solicited. I'm on
Right.
the phone with Apple. Apple was like, all right, we don't know who you are. Let us send a notification. You confirm it, and then that lets us know who we're talking to, and now we can continue
Right.
with the actual support. That's the only time Apple's going to send you some sort of notification that you have to confirm your identity. Any other
And
time, go ahead.
also isn't it in like Apple messages, when you get a message from Apple in your messages, it's a distinct, it's from Apple. It's
And
not just
it's
like a regular text or a
right,
regular message.
and it's not out of the blue. Like if you're chatting on Apple's website or something like that, they may use text message to have those conversations, but it's like a whole different color. I think the bubbles are
Yeah, it
gray.
looks different. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So those are only times you're going to get a message or a notification from Apple for you to do anything as it relates to your Apple ID or your identification, right? Any other
Right.
time, it's just don't even report it as junk. Don't even open it. Don't click on any of the links.
Don't click on it.
Delete it, ignore it, do what you got to do. But just know that there is a SMS phishing scam out there, similar to email. You'll get an email from somebody and the website be just a little bit off, or the spelling be just a little bit off, those are the things to look for in an email. Well, people now know they're using text messages for everything.
Yeah.
So now here come the hackers and the attackers. Now they're hitting you up on your text messages. So my hookup for the week is be on the lookout for these SMS phishing schemes. And if you get any sort of message from Apple unsolicited, it's not from Apple. Just delete it,
It's
report it, ignore it, do what you got to do.
yeah.
All right. So that is my hookup for the week. And Nica, if you don't have anything else, that's going to do it for this week's show. Tell the folks where they can find you.
You can find me at Tech Savvy Diva everywhere.
And you can find me all over the internet at Brother Tech. That's BrothaTech. To catch up with the show, please go to snoboscast.com to get all of those details. Like we mentioned, we put show notes and references and links back to all of these stories that we talk about on our website. The only way you can get those stories, the only way you can get those references or that context is if you go to snoboscast.com. So please do that. We greatly appreciate it. And until next week, we are out. Peace.
Bye, everybody.